Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to New Wave Global. I'm Rabia Mehmood. New Wave is an independent news site which looks at the world through a South Asian lens. Please do subscribe, like, comment on our discussions, and also give us your feedback. Over the years, due to marginalization, Pakistan's religious minorities have been forced into internal displacement and had to flee persecution for asylum abroad. One such community whose migration from Pakistan is not focused on much are the Hindus of the country, primarily because they are increasingly heading over to India, and also because they have had to live with the stigma of being labeled pro India. To speak more about this, we have with us Zia Rahman, journalist, author, and researcher. Rehman reports for the New York Times, Asian Nikkei, and Dawn, among other publications. And he has also just published a research paper with the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan focusing on the exodus of Pakistani Hindus to India. Zia, welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
First of all, please tell us why Pakistani Hindus are moving to India and when exactly did this pattern of migration begin? I'm asking you this because there has been some sort of focus on the fact that, yes, Pakistani Hindus are going to India, but like at least for over a decade now, we have heard these we have heard about this, we have read some reporting on this, but it's never been discussed more openly, it's never been researched more thoroughly because it is difficult to understand and get people to speak to researchers and journalists. So your work is important, and also just can you just start from what are the reasons for migration, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you, Rabia. I think it's happening for many decades, but it is not reported or recorded properly, and there are many reasons. One, because there is these things are happening very silently, very secretly, and during my research in these three largest cities in Northern Sindh, Ghotki, Kashmore, and Jacobabad, so people also, the Hindu community leaders and activists also said that we also didn't feel the migration is going on because most of the people who are living for other countries, particularly India, they are basically financially they are well off, they are traders, and they have already family connections in India who are basically inviting them, they're sponsoring their visits, and first they go on the religious pilgrimage, and then when they go there, so they see the opportunities, and then silently they move with the families and they sell their businesses to their relatives here. So the issue is that why it is not being observed, because the shops are or houses which is vacated by them, they are filled by the new Hindu communities who are migrating from rural areas to urban centers. So we are not seeing that entire town or neighborhood has been vacated. When it is vacated, it directly filled. So and they have many reasons. The foremost reason is not faith. It is basically law and order, which is most of the respondent tell us, particularly in Northern Sindh. One more thing, we have to understand that the class divide in the Hindu community in Pakistan, particularly Sindh. So we have minority upper caste Hindus, and we have majority scheduled caste Hindus, which is basically poor of the poor. They are in majority. We have a separate section for them, like scheduled caste Hindus in census. But issue is that because of illiteracy and unawareness, people also take on the Hindu section, not scheduled caste. So therefore, we don't have a big actual number of the scheduled caste. But when you go in the field, when you talk to the people, majority of the Hindu community in Pakistan are basically belonging to the scheduled caste, but they are not presented in the numbers. And this scheduled caste, they don't have any presentation into the parliament, provincial or national. They don't have any voice because of the poverty and illiteracy. On the other hand, these upper caste Hindus, which is very big businessmen, and they have very influential groups like Pakistan Hindu Council. They have their seats in Provincial Assembly and National Assembly and Senate. So, so it is very important to differentiate it, because this migration, which I am mentioning, they are basically happening in upper caste Hindus, because they are more afraid of the law and order situation, because we have seen in recent years that most of their people have been abducted and they have to pay millions of rupees through tribal chieftain, Muslim tribal chieftain, or police officers. So they basically are more afraid, and they are basically have this connection and resources to go abroad.
Okay, so thank you. There's a lot to unpack here. I mean, some of my follow-up questions you've addressed, but I think we should sort of further look into what your findings are and what you've just spoken about. The caste thing, like you're saying, is very important in Pakistan. Yes, anyone who travels through Sindh or even rest of Pakistan can tell that majority of the Hindus are scheduled caste Hindus, and people in the rest of the world or in India understand them through a different category, but that's what they are called here. And even within the Hindu community in Pakistan, there is discrimination towards that majority, right? The upper caste would discriminate against the lower caste, and there's always been this issue of their representation, not just in the parliament, but even in social causes in the civil society, right? Because for instance, in forced conversion matters, most of the girls who and young women and girls who are vulnerable and who are subjected to forced conversion from the Hindu community are not from the upper caste Hindus, but the cases of the upper caste Hindus, women from those families just get highlighted more. I'm just thinking of Wrinkle Kumari's case, which was just was very prominent in the media. But I also you said that the primary reason, let's start from, the reasons again. You said the primary reason is not faith. It is the deterioration of the law and order, and also increasing crime, because we saw, like, over the past 2 years, there have been protests from the Hindu community in Northern Sindh and elsewhere, where they've been protesting against dacoities. One of the former speakers of the caretaker government, the previous caretaker government, Pervez Ashraf, I was looking at, like, when they just sort of taken more of a position on this and said, no, their protection is our responsibility. But of course, the government and law enforcement are failing if that's happening. So can you just explain to us more about other factors and this factor more? Because in your report, you have written about the climate being an issue, forced conversions being an issue, increase in blasphemy-linked violence in the issue, and also the economic reasons. So first, let's look at those factors, and then we'd also like to kind of look into the caste issue more, because even the scheduled caste people are willing to go, and they do move, even if they don't have much of a network in India or otherwise. So the reasons first.
Okay, so as I said it, because I said this thing on the basis of the interviews I conducted with the community leaders. So if you see the Northern Sindh, it's not only the Hindus, it's also the Muslims too, which has been kidnapped, and you cannot travel after the sunset on the Shikarpur Road or Kashmore and Ghotki. Okay, but issue is that the Hindus are, because they're minority, so they're double. You can say they're more vulnerable than the Muslims, and we have seen that there's very low rate of state in these parts of Sindh, where the tribal clashes, tribal chiefs are more powerful. There's more tribal clashes. In this situation, because I told you that the Hindu community in these areas are well off, and they are so afraid of these insecurity that they are compelled to do partnership with the tribal chieftain, where the tribal chieftain don't invest, but they're getting 20 to 30% profit share from them, and they put their name on their shops, sugar mills, transport, that no one can harm them, because the dacoits or robbers or any criminal, they believe that, okay, it's belong to the tribal chieftain, or this Hindu community leader is partner with the tribal chieftain. It is their way to save themselves from the dacoits. So if you go on the road, so you can see Meher and Ramesh Kumar, blah, bills. So it's very common practice, number one. Number two, I agree with you that the conversion issue. Again, as you said, that the conversion issue is also more complicated. As you said that when someone from upper caste Hindu community convert forcibly or consent with the voluntarily, so their parliamentary and their civil society raise the voices. You have given a very good example of Rehman Kumari. But most of these things happening with the lower caste Hindus, where now this become a trend. That I did a story 2 years back in which I have seen that because most of the scheduled caste people are basically the bonded laborers, they are facing double exploitation, one from Muslim, second from upper caste Hindus. So they basically want to change their faith to get rid of these death and social stigma. Okay, so not only Muslim but also other faith are also heavily converting them in
Okay.
yeah. So like Protestant Christians are converting them, Sikh are converting them, even like
Okay.
Ahmadi Muslim are converting them. So it's very in this community. It's also a sort of forced conversion because the environment, the atmosphere in Pakistan, they're basically forcing them to convert voluntarily. So no one can. So there's no willingly. They are basically the situation around them that bounded labor. Because I have seen in some cases, I reported it that some Islamist group they basically paid off their debt, and they say, okay, now you are free. So they get converted. I attended one of the event in Tandulaya in where 102 people, the families, they basically collectively announced to convert. So I'm not saying that it is a voluntary thing. It is a situation which is basically forcing them to convert. Blasphemy thing is very important. We have seen more. So these things we have seen more in Ghotki, where we have seen some examples. There's a very famous incident of the Northern Lal in Ghotki, the school principal, and then we have also seen other thing. So blasphemy, like rest of the country, like in Punjab, it's also affecting some upper caste Hindus. They basically literally told their children not to mingle with the Muslim children because sometimes issue raised with the friendship and become entire community get like faced up, burnt to the mob. So consequences. So it's a more complicated thing. Also climate change, because these districts are more hot weather, like Jacobabad. When I was there on that day, there was 51 centigrade heat. So also socio-economic condition is also one of the reason when they go to the India, or even there are there are two type of thing. One, first they come to Sakkar, Hyderabad, or Karachi. Some go to Middle East, Dubai, and some go to the India. But the India thing is not easy thing, because it could be your next question. And I'm just adding here that the trend I noticed that because two things that most people with these things is happening, it is basically going from Jacobabad, Ghotki, and Kashmore. From Jacobabad, the Hindu community go to Indore in Madhya Pradesh. From Ghotki, people are going to Nagpur in Maharashtra, and from Kashmir, they are going to Raipur in Chhattisgarh. Why these districts? Because they have already families there. Okay, and very interestingly, that the local chapters of BJP or even Congress, they basically established these some like we can say like organizations which is basically helping them to get the asylum. Similar thing happened with the scheduled caste Hindus, which moved to Rajasthan, but they didn't allow. They were kept in camps, and there was so worse situation that in one case we have seen that I think 8 or 9 people took their lives in one incident. So the class thing in India matters. The BJP and to some extent Congress in the local chapters, provinces, they only encourage and they only facilitate the upper caste Hindus. They're not dealing with the scheduled caste Hindus. It is the reason that many people from scheduled caste, they came back and they're silently living in their own district. So in India, it is not easy for scheduled caste because their class thing is more severe. It was, I observed through the interviews. Yes.
Okay. So you're saying that the class and caste problem, which exists in India, which we read
Class.
about,
Yeah.
is something which impacts the Pakistani asylum seekers, Hindu asylum seekers, also if they are from the scheduled caste and when they're moving to India. So they continue to be vulnerable even in India. And
Yeah.
based on your interviews, you're saying that some have returned, although they're still leaving, but they do try and then return.
Yeah, I'm saying that the
Not
scheduled caste
everyone,
people,
but
no, not
yeah.
everyone, scheduled caste people return because no one is facilitating their case. So they're living
Okay.
for a year, 2 years, they knew that, okay, they're like, am I saying that the class and casting is more strong in India? So after this incident of death of 9 people in Rajasthan, many people returned. Yeah.
What year was this? Or
Also, India is not giving visa to everyone. These are only the visas which they are basically getting. The people are getting from their relatives
okay.
in India, which are well off, which are politically connected. So they are basically uh, issuing them special visas, and then they're going. It's not easy for every Hindu to go there.
Okay. From Pakistan. Yeah. And what year was the suicide incident from?
I think
Do
it was
you
2019.
2019? Okay. Yeah, and I do think that, I mean, of course, if someone's moving from Pakistan to India, then there would be scrutiny as well over there, understandably so, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
generally, the asylum process in any country can be very difficult. So I'm assuming it's also difficult over there. And of course, when you don't have a setup to help you in the country you're moving to, or in a second country, then it gets more complicated. But I also want to if you can expand a bit on the upper caste Hindus who do get to move to India and have a network there. We had also a few years back, you know, you probably have also come across this, but other journalists and civil society from the Hindu communities in Sindh had raised that one of the reasons for migrating is also for the higher upper caste Hindus is that they don't have enough um, uh, people here. So the numbers, they're in fewer number here, and if they want to marry off their
Oh,
daughters,
yes, yes.
and then they don't have suitable spouses in in Pakistan, and there's a likelihood of them finding suitable spouses for their daughters in India. It's also a caste thing, right? When I'm saying suitable, it's also a class thing, and people from their own
Casting.
socio-economic background. How much of that is true
Yes.
now? Yeah.
Yes, the matchmaking, is a very important point because again, class and caste both matters. So they don't find the people of their own caste in Pakistan. So it's also one of the reasons I also mentioned it in my report, particularly in Parker. The most of the people from Thakur family, they basically marry into the across the border because they have the community there. So yeah, one of the reason is the matchmaking. So they also are worried about their daughters and sons to marry suitable girls from their own class and from their own community, like tribe or caste. Yeah. So in Pakistan, again, as I told you that most of people are uh, scheduled caste Hindus, so they don't mingle with
They
them.
would.
Like very
Yeah.
smart thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want them to marry to into other clans or other castes. So you're saying that's also is the same for men,
Yes. Yes.
not just Hindu women here in Pakistan. Okay, so
Even
speaking of.
one more thing I will add. Events linked with the India, they also make problem for them. They believe. Like for example, I think 2 years back, when this one young Pakistani Muslim girl from Sindh, she went to India to marry a Hindu person
Hmm.
we found
Hmm.
on TikTok or social media,
Hmm.
and we have seen that the dacoits of the Sindh threatened Hindu community that we will take your temples. Okay,
Hmm.
and then in the parliament, in Sindh Assembly Parliament, there was more hue and cry on them. Okay, like so, any event, whether it is a Babri Masjid incident, whether it's this the girl Seema thing, so they are so afraid with the reaction of any event linked with the India.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe that's also one of the reasons why it's so it's this is happening so silently, right? Even when we look at the displacement or migration or asylum seeking processes of other religious minorities, the Hindu one um is tough to study, it's tough to document. People would also are probably reluctant in speaking more about it. How do you find it? Were people more forthcoming when it came to interviews, or was that an issue? Getting them to
I
open up?
think I think people were not forthcoming because they are afraid, because it is very sensitive issue, because it is linked with the migration to the India, because in Pakistan people don't talk. So it was the reason that most of the people I spoke, they spoke on the like they want to remain anonymous. Yeah. So I
Anonymous.
just put their professions and their destinations, like yeah.
Okay. So how is it that the civil society, the Hindu civil society in Pakistan, including from, the divide, the class and caste divide, how have they responded to this phenomena? I have seen statements, but how do they explain it? How do they look at it? And of course, it's voluntary migration. No one can and must not stop it. But there are factors which lead to people feeling insecure and unsafe, and the fact that they don't have enough protection. What is their response to it?
One thing is that we don't have such a vibrant civil society.
Mm.
Again, in the community, you rightly said it is so divided. Uh, like uh, like uh, like one thing I noticed that when you say that the caste thing, they completely say no, we don't have any class issue. But
Hmm.
there is a basically class issue is there. So most of the people, okay. So and also the important interesting thing is that most of the activists who rose from the scheduled caste, when they become prominent and they become like prominent civil society activists or parliamentarians, they also avoid to say, okay, we are from that caste. They also ignore their. So I think the real issue is with uh, the scheduled caste, which don't have any representation, which don't have any proper voice in civil society. If we have some names, some voices, but it is not heard properly. Uh, yeah, and second thing is, as I told you, that it's not a big trend. It's going on so silently. Like for example, I, along my family, moved to India or Karachi or Dubai. Okay, no one. So it's happening so silently, so no one is noticing basically. People notice
Hmm.
then when they go there and they post their photos on social media. Okay, oh, this family has moved. But again, I
Hmm.
told you that they sell their things so silently to their brothers, cousins, their own community people. So we are not seeing that many shops or many houses has been become vacant. Okay, so other interesting thing that four brothers, two brothers living there, two brothers are living here. So it is a reason that we don't have a proper number. We don't have a numbers how many has went. And I'm saying that we can also not say that whether it is a large train or small train, because when you don't have a number, you cannot uh, uh, like
Comment.
paint a picture. But thing is that it's a fact that people are migrating
Hmm.
at a slow pace, but they're migrating.
Yeah, and you're saying that they're not selling off their assets, so they're not just sort of cutting off ties.
Yeah, so some are selling their property, but some are selling to their brothers. Maybe the brother will pay him and he will buy property in the destination where he is moving, but people are not noticing it. But one thing is that the Sindhi media, they basically report it regularly. But issue with the Sindhi media is because they don't know how to cover these issues in a very proper way to investigate. Like, for example, there was one news in Panji Akhbar that hundreds of family left to India from Kashmir, but there's no so proper information from which village, who are they, who said 500. So there's no proper attribution, no proper codes. So because of there's a not trained to highlight these trends properly. So it is reporting in the Sindhi media, but not in a proper way that we can find a trend. Yeah.
Okay, I want you to briefly comment about the uh, extremist factor in Sindh and how that has impacted the lives of Hindus in the province. And also I also want to, like, if you, I mean, although your research is based on migration from Sindh, but we did see some reporting a few years back that there were Hindus from Rahim Yar Khan who were traveling, who were leaving Pakistan for India, and they could be from Balochistan as well, because that's where there is some population. So overall, the rise in extremism and militancy, especially with the presence of TLP now in Sindh, how does that impact the life of minorities overall?
One thing I will just say that in Pakistan, there's also a general trend of migration to abroad. Like, not Hindus, also many Pakistani Muslims, particularly youth, they are basically trying to move to other countries. If you see the report of European Union Agency of Asylum, they also reported that when there are many rise this year in European countries from different parts of the Pakistan. So I think, yes, it is a part of the larger trend to migrate to these countries, other countries, to because of the country economic situation and political situation. But for the minorities, particularly Hindus, uh, there is other factors too. Like, for example, we have rightly mentioned the blasphemy issue, and it's an issue that is affecting entire country, but particularly the minorities, Hindus and Christians, and we have seen so many violences in Gujranwala and Ghotki and like even in the Muslim community are also not spared. Like from like we have seen recently two incidents in Quetta and Mirpur Khas, in which policemen basically killed two Muslims, falsely accusing of the blasphemy. So I think it's one of the reasons that the incident which is happening across the country in the mob violence is also forcing the Hindu community, the Christian community to think about to move to a safer place. And it's not easy. It's not easy migration because from one place, when you are born, you have assets, then you are leaving everything behind and you are moving with the new place. So it's not easy. One more interesting thing I noticed from my interviews, because these are basically the Pakistani Hindus, and they are so basically grown up in a very conservative society. So one people was saying that my brother was not happy in India because the India is a very liberal, and they want like their children to be like a, so issue is because they're born here, they are brought up in a society that they're more concerned about their the culture and the advancement of the Indian society. So someone was 2 3 people mentioned also in Indore particularly they are more concerned about the Indian society, which is more advanced and more liberal.
Liberal. Yeah, I mean, they live in a more conservative, or should I say modest
Modest.
circumstances, right?
Yeah, like,
Like,
for example, you are going from Jacobabad to like a other. So it is very. They are not moving from
that's a
Karachi or
that's a big
Hyderabad.
jump.
Yeah. Yes. Big gap here.
Yeah. Okay, so also this is very interesting, and I'm sorry if I've missed this, but you mentioned that Hindus do also try moving to other countries, not just to India. So Pakistani Hindus are also moving to the UAE and elsewhere. I mean, depending
Yes.
upon their status and what they can afford. Can you also speak a bit about that?
Yeah, so most of the people are basically sending their children to Western countries on the education visa. Okay, they're also moving to, because they are well off, so they're also moving to UAE for businesses. Okay, but they're sending their children, particularly both boys and girls, to the education, uh, and just to get them settled there. So yeah, it's also going on, but it
Okay.
is without family. It is only sending the children.
Okay. Okay. And children, men and young women
Yeah,
both.
because it's not easy to go with the family there, so it will take time. So yeah,
Yeah,
but
because
but
you in
but 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 but, but when children get some relationship or something documents, then they bring their parents too.
do you know of Pakistani Hindus who managed to get citizenship in India, or
I was reading
are in the process?
some yeah. So one thing is that basically it started from this BJP, the CAA Act, in which we said that we will ask all minorities to come. So again, uh, it's not easy because it does not get in time, and as you said, that there's so much scrutiny. So it's not easy thing. But if you have family connections and you have so yeah, I was reading some reports in Indian publications, particularly from Madhya Pradesh, that some district magistrate office they are getting some citizenship, but I don't know the numbers, exact number, because it's so underreported thing there also.
Yeah, I mean, this number thing I think is a continuous problem on this front, right?
Yeah.
People are leaving, but we don't know um how. I mean, and maybe it's not important to always have numbers, to understand
Yes.
these issues,
Yes.
because we're so fixated when we're researching or investigating on data, and yes, it's important, but like your research has found out and solidified it further that yes, migration of Pakistani Hindus from Pakistan to India is continuously taking place, and that's a
Yeah.
fact.
So yeah. So it is sometimes it goes slower, sometimes it's grower faster, but it is very slow. So it is not like suddenly they decide. But it's a slow process. First they work, they undergo on the invitation, then they see how the area is look like, what I will do, then he come back. It takes months to sell their properties. So it's not suddenly going on. It's a small, like slow things. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years to but they decide, when they decide I have to go, then they go. We also seen many brothers are not going there. They say I will be there. You can go. So some people are going, some are not going there.
Okay, in families. Zia
Yeah.
Rahman, thank you so much for speaking to us and explaining your research. Thanks to our viewers for watching. Khuda Hafiz.